And welcome back, everybody, to Zero Point Reviews. Yes, we got a normal opening this week because we're not off topic yet, but we will be soon. I am Jeff, and I am joined as always with Kevin, and we're tackling RoboCop 2. All right, Kev, what'd you think of this one?
This was one of those movies where I just kind of went, it's still fun. I
Yeah,
like
I like this
RoboCop
one.
too.
Yeah, I like this one.
This, like, when you look at other franchises, sci-fi franchises, horror franchises, uh, say like The Crow, for example, the first movie is epic, just like RoboCop. The second movie is good, and then it just kind of declines from there. RoboCop kind of does that too, but I want to say RoboCop 2 was better than The Crow City of Angels.
Yeah,
For
I
me,
would
anyway.
say so. I almost look at it a little bit like Beverly Hills Cop a little bit. It's a different genre, of course, but like the first one is really good. That's what launched the whole damn thing. And the second one is better for Beverly Hills Cop Part 2. It's also very different. It's a lot more action comedy rather than just more dramatic comedy as opposed to the
Yeah.
first one. But this one, you go from what the first one did, which is just ultimately a classic film, period. And it feels like when you get to the second one, like it feels different. At the same time, it does maintain a lot of the same sort of like energy from the first one, but it ultimately fails from missing a few things and kind of missing the point of other things. But it has some great ideas and great concepts in it. So it still feels like the movie is trying to do something here, as opposed to when you get to RoboCop 3, it feels like they just fucking gave up at that point.
Yeah, I don't have a good excuse for what they did with 3. Like I said before, I still can't bring myself to watch that one. But part 2 kind of got cut out from the knees because of when it came out. Like you said, it wanted to keep with the themes of the original movie, and to a large degree they do. But we're also in a different era at this point where Tipper Gore really had her parental supervision thing going. All the CDs had parental supervision on their parental advisory stickers. Movies were starting to get a lot more scrutinized. But at the same time, studios wanted to stay true to those original franchises, but pack more seats in the theater. And you can't get kids into an R-rated feature. So, well, you're not supposed to.
Well, I got a story about that with this movie.
Oh, Lord.
My mother took me to this movie, and when we were walking out of it, she's like, "That is the last R-rated movie I ever take you to." And so that's my fun little story is rental stores, I could rent whatever I wanted. But if I wanted to go see one of these at the theater, I had to, of course, take my mother with me, or she had to take me as it would go. And I know exactly what scene it was. It was when they blew up the ambulance towards the very end. And, you have the old man and the other guy talking about, okay, we need to get spin control on this right away. Like clearly they're trying, we got to cover this up or put a spin doctor on this. And I remember the scoff. And that's when she would lean over and she said, "This is the last R-rated movie I ever take you to."
Is that when
And it
they
was, because then I had to start scamming my way into R-rated movies at that point. So I had to, hey, all of us did it as kids. We figured our way into R-rated movies on our own.
Oh, sure, sure. And there was a lot of different ways to do that. In my case, what I would usually do is I try to figure out like what can I see at the same time that my parents go see something else. Like sneak the fuck out, go see Prophecy, go see Beavis and Butthead Do America. By the time South Park came out, it didn't really matter. Lethal Weapon 3, I think, was another one of those movies that I went to go see in the theater. We snuck through. uh but movies like that, there was really no reason not to go see it. The only situation that I had where like you were discussing or you were talking about is when my aunt took me to go see Silence of the Lambs.
Mm.
So pretty much anything after that was old hat.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I took my poor cousin Matthew to Species 2, R-rated movie, and I did not realize how graphic and hot that movie would be. And and I got him back, and about a week later, my aunt's like, what movie did you take him to? And I told her, and she's like, oh, no, you didn't. And I'm like, yeah, I did, and I'm not taking any more of my cousins to a movie after that because I didn't think it was going to be that bad.
Is that movie with that Natasha
And Scrooge getting all naked and freaky. Yes,
I was,
it was.
I was
And
gonna
they
say,
did it naked and freaky in CGI too. And so we had that going on. Hey, all of you YouTubers that are watching us, put a comment below. You have some sort of R-rated story too. I'm willing to bet. So throw that down and share with us what you got going on or what you remember from sneaking into movies. I think my favorite trick was, let's see. Major League 3 is out or Major League 2 is out at the same time. It's PG-13. I'm going to buy a ticket to that, but I'm really going to see the Friday the 13th movie.
those are always good too.
So if it was in 15 minutes, I just go right in, grab my popcorn, and just go right down. And instead of turning right to my theater, I go left. Nobody was checking tickets back then.
No, they really didn't. They really didn't. And for the most part, nobody cared because it was kids working at the fucking theater anyway.
Right. They were too busy.
Yeah, right. Doing something that actually mattered, like making popcorn or going out to take a cigarette or pop break, whichever.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I missed this one in the theater. I would have liked to have seen this one in the theater.
This was great on the big screen from what I remember.
Do you? Okay.
And I do remember enjoying the movie a whole hell of a lot too at the time. As an adult looking at it with a critical eye, like just for this, there's some points I think I can see why this didn't really work out as well as people had hoped it would.
A lot of people point that finger at this guy. Good old Frank Miller wrote this story.
Dick.
And
I'm kidding.
He's great. I love Frank. And it's not always where he comes out with a story that it's going to be like a great big thing. Like not every Sin City book was a huge hit, and Sin City 2 was not a good movie. But again, this movie didn't really suffer so much from his ideas as it did just scrutiny and studio involvement is really what I saw it. And then budget cuts, a lot of budget cuts to where you notice it in the costumes for the officers. You notice it a little bit in the CGI because again, we're 3 years in the future. CGI is not as good as it could have been at that point, but it was still better than what it was where they were using it. But the violence, it didn't have, not so much the violence, it didn't have the capitalist dog eat dog vibe to it that the first movie was basically about. Like OCP owns this city, like the business owns a whole city. And I don't think it was until this last watch with that critical eye where I'm kind of like, they really are cocksuckers, like to a very large degree. Like you said, instead of calling like the police to or clean up whatever, they call a PR team to fucking absolve themselves of whatever happened.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, but OCP, like they got worse, I think, by the time we were in part 2. And I think that was good on Frank. He kept that theme of the capitalists being shitty.
Oh, I actually really like that part of the movie. Is like they kept them like mean-spirited, like these evil rich assholes who are like all about the bottom line, and that's a predominant theme throughout the movies. Is like they're all about stockholder prices, share prices, and making sure the money keeps flowing. military contracts, whatever. They don't care. Just get the job done. Just keep the money coming in. But that's not where I felt like the movie fell apart. I feel like one of the drawbacks is you go from the first movie where every one of the villains, like Clarence and his gang, they all had strong, intimidating personalities, yet very different from one another. In this one, who did we have? We had the Lady Shark, basically the psychologist who wanted to put a criminal mind in a robot. Great idea, provides a great villain for RoboCop to fight against instead of a idiot Ed 209, which we saw stuck in a manhole cover for 5 seconds. And then but like every one of like Cain's gang, just weak, no character, no strength, no intimidation. They're just, oh, we're pretty and we can do things. You got a fucking kid who looks like he's missing from a prep school. You got what's her name who just looks like a model. And then none of them are memorable. None of them stand out. They're all, I don't know. I felt the gang was incredibly weak looking at it like this time with a critical eye. And I'm like, you have to have charismatic villains who can butt up against RoboCop. Not everybody can be Clarence Boddicker and Dick Jones. You are basically following the Riddler and the Joker, and you followed up with the Mad Hatter. Like, you can't go from A-list to C-list with your villains, and that's what it felt like, because Cain, good villain. The Lady Doctor, she was all right. I did like how that got interwoven, but like that gang had nothing going on. And I could not take that kid seriously, like at all. Like, oh, he's got drugs. Well, where's her stash? If she's a drug addict, where's her secret stash? Like, don't lie to me. There's a secret stash somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, she clearly turns into a bag bitch by the end of the fucking, or even well before the end of the first act.
All right.
Like she basically does whatever the kid says, abandoning Cain just for one extra hit. So, yeah, she wasn't anything special. Hobb, the little kid, I think was memorable only because it was a kid. Like you remember, oh yeah, that's the one where the kid was like big boss or whatever.
And dropping F-bombs.
Yes. And he had a gun that was supposed to look futuristic and sound like an Uzi. But if you look at it really slowly, and again, it was one of those slides that I took a screen grab, but then threw it away. It was a caulk gun, is all it was. It was basically a caulk gun with a little bit of extra paint and some putty on it to make it look like it was more squared instead of cylindrical. There was a lot of stuff like that that really took the movie out from the knees. The bad guys that were more memorable that I caught with the watchful eye was the OCP guys. At right. This point, you're like, oh shit, I never caught before what their fucking flag looks like. That's so shit.
Yeah, we don't have to say nothing. It speaks for itself and written next to the side on the slide.
Yeah, and their guards looked like fucking Spaceballs compared to the fucking cops. Like they looked like German soldiers to a point.
Yeah.
Which okay, but then you started seeing OCP being more of a bad guy, like the same way that Dick Jones was. Like right. Dick Jones had that comment like, we've got extra parts for 25 years. Who cares if the goddamn thing worked or not? We're going to turn that profit. And you see that a lot with OCP here, even with Johnson. Like, I thought Johnson was like the only good guy in OCP, but no,
I like that.
Yeah. Watching it this time, he's not. Johnson is just like, he's smart. He's just as smart as Bob, knowing to throw this lady under the bus.
That was awesome. Love that scene.
Yeah, and like getting the chairman on board and Boner, he was so into it. Like, you're right. That will, look good on us, and not someone else. Get on that idea. And then he leaves with her. You're like,
Oh,
oh,
well, how that went, because I just watched it more recently. She comes down and he's thinking about like, do we really want to do this or not? And then after he hugs her, he turns around and he's like, that thing we were talking about, Johnson, get right on that. Immediately. Like, it's like right after that hug, it's like, get this bitch out of here now. Like, I wanted this done like a day ago. And that was very assertive of like, okay, I'm done thinking about it, bitch gone.
But did you notice what they do when they're leaving the scene? One of the ladies that got shot, he walks right over her.
Steps right over her like a boss. It's like that Lonely Island song, like a boss.
Like a boss.
Stepped over a corpse like a boss.
That's why I got here, but at the same time, it's like Big Johnson. Like most people don't remember that. Like go deeper into the bush and hit harder if you're using a Big Johnson. You get kicked out of school wearing it.
I had two shirts. I wore them to school.
But see, those were like classic 80s things, and this movie didn't really have that. It had some fun stuff. They really tried putting satirical commercials in there.
And some of them were great. Some of them were not.
Yes,
I love the John Glover one that opened the movie, honestly.
That one was fantastic. That's
car security device for anybody who's not remembering the movie very well.
Yeah. Basically,
Magnavolt.
Doesn't it electrocute the guy?
Yep. He did.
Yeah.
And you can still get in your car and go within seconds.
Yeah, no smell. It's no mess. You're like, God damn. And then the only other commercial that really came up to par with that one was the lady using like 3,000 SPF fucking suntan lotion, because spend more than 20 minutes out in the sun without
LA sun.
Yeah, you're gonna die from cancer. Or you're gonna contract melanoma. So she's got this blue goo all over her, and you can stay out there for hours. It's like, okay. You look like you're ready to go hang out with Kirk.
Oh yeah. Aside from the commercials, I also like the news anchor bits again. Like at least they kept that relatively consistent with the first one too. Because my favorite was the Amazon nuclear facility thing. And the one anchor, let's see, I wrote this down here. He said, environmentalists call it a disaster. And then he throws to the other female anchor and she goes, don't they always?
Yeah.
Kind of like, yeah, it's always about them. Everything's a disaster to them.
The Amazon war, they kept that consistent through the first two movies and then even the TV series. That was one of the
TV series
like,
doesn't reference part two like at all, though.
No, it doesn't.
That's something we'll talk about on the podcast when we cover that coming up shortly. But that's my one big problem, because there's one episode where they do introduce another drug and they incorporate criminals again in the show for work for OCP. And part of me screaming, doesn't anybody fucking remember RoboCop 2 and fucking Cain? Can somebody not throw that line in there of, we did this before with a drug lord and we put him in a cyber suit. Now we're employing them straight up without doing anything to them. Does nobody have a problem with this?
Whose brain did we put in it?
Abby a drug lord. And it's like, there was no tie-in, but they did set stuff up in RoboCop 2 that did carry into their show a little bit. So
yes. Again, the news anchors with the war, they keep talking about that throughout the series, which is kind of fun. And it's never anything consistent about it. It's just, they just keep mentioning it.
It's like some big war going on in the Amazon.
Yeah, where you wouldn't picture a war being, because it's like paradise.
Be largely a guerrilla warfare anyway.
Yeah, right. You'd think.
Yeah.
but I don't think they did anything extra awesome like having the fucking Star Wars satellite accidentally misfire and destroy Santa Barbara.
That's true.
Santa Barbara's really pretty, but there's a lot of Southern California. It's just kind of like, would you miss it? Would you miss it?
Boy, they do punch jokes at California.
As a Californian
And former Californian.
yeah, like they deserve it. They deserve it. No state is perfect, but California does some really dumb shit.
Yeah.
Like to the point where it's like the whole state is dying economically, socially, environmentally. It's all decaying.
We just need the governor back.
Kinda like that was not the worst thing that happened to California at the time.
The worst came after. I know.
Oh, I'm sure that's probably true, but I'd already left at that point.
Yep, I'm long gone.
I left just after Arnold got elected. And I was like super happy that he did, because Gray Davis, the current governor at that point, was like a fraudulent, shisty son of a bitch. Like he was in it with the power company to create brownouts, shortages and shit like that, so they'd get a little bit extra scratch. And it affected a lot of stuff. Like there was like certain rides at Universal Studios that couldn't be on at certain points of the day. It's like, well, I want to ride that shit too. 0 pointed again. We're talking. This is an MGM
You need a sound
property
effect for this.
A miss. Oh. Yeah, going back to this MGM classic, definitely not Universal Studios.
MGM. Orion Pictures.
It was hard not to think of a few lines from Mystery Science Theater in this. Like, why did they make a robot that can't go downstairs? Look,
again.
Yeah, Orion's bankrupt. Shit like that. But I mean, seeing Orion Pictures, things like Orion Pictures, Canon, MGM, it's nostalgic to me. Like sometimes they made really cool movies like this.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Terminator.
do you have any other favorite scenes? One of my favorite scenes is when they reprogrammed him to be all PG with like the 256 different prime directives, and then he's reading Miranda rights to a dead guy, and the little leaguers are like, "Oh, he's fucked up."
I do have that somewhere. I think I did. Thank God. This scene here, he's sitting there reading the guy his fucking Miranda rights, and look at his legs. They're going in two fucking different directions.
It's like he's doing a yoga pose.
and there, Lewis yells at him like, Murphy, and he turns and looks like, what? He's dead. You're reading a dead man his rights. And he just turns and looks like, well, ain't that some shit?
I wonder how many times Peter had to do that. See, because people will probably crack it up.
I don't know, but it's like I needed to get that picture because the legs going in different directions fucking had me dying.
That was great.
It's horrible, but it's like it was so fucking funny.
Yeah.
A lot of this was funny. RoboCop, the first movie, was funny in like
how serious
ways.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah, this was funny in a lot of ironic ways. Like
exactly.
Again, it's a product of the Dare era. So they've got the Just Say No slogan, and they've got kids that are doing drugs, and how terrible is that? They also punch at it at the same time, like with the kids spray painting on him while he's trying to give a Dare message. That you just listen to it and you're just kind of like, oh my God, what is happening here? So I mean, you definitely sympathize with him, where he goes to fix himself and nukes himself basically to override those protocols. You're like, yeah, I'd probably off myself too. He got turned into a kitten.
Meow.
And by one of the world's first fucking focus groups too.
Yeah. That was not lost on me.
Yeah, this franchise predicts a lot of things, and between the first movie, the second movie, and again the TV series, and I'm only halfway through the series, there is a lot of relevancy, like mistakes that they've pointed out because we were making those mistakes in the 80s that we're doing again. And you're just kind of like, but they made really bad television about it. Like, it was so stupid that it made a show stupid.
Yep.
But we actually do things like that. Like, I don't know where we fucking live anymore sometimes, because it's like, we'll just say it, electing a fucking reality TV star as president. We've done some pretty questionable things in the country since RoboCop came out.
Did you see the Bobby Ventura as the Minnesota governor?
Kinda, but it's like OCP very much looks like what we had between 2016 on. Like, there was black bagging happening. There was businesses getting more power than they'd ever had before. So, I mean, having gone through that as an adult and then going back and seeing the movie that we saw as a kid, like, it was a comic book. It was supposed to stay a comic book. And we've grown up to fucking make these stupid ass mistakes that we saw in a dumb fucking comic book. I don't know where we fucked up.
That's the cycle of time. Things repeat themselves in a loop over and over and over again.
It was bad. We've done bad things, and we've had good examples of bad things, like RoboCop. But the things that were serious to point out was like the fascism, the holding up your hand to the OCP sign that very much looked like the swastika. The bad guy, she was basically Dr. Frankenstein, but she looked more like Ray Finkel, if anything. Like, she was trying to be cute, but also like there was no weakness about her. She knew what she wanted. She was willing to step on anybody to get it. Clearly, she was fucking boner, you know. So,
for a she was psychologist or psychiatrist? Can't remember specifically, but man, she used that to the nth degree. Like, I can reprogram and, I can do psychotherapy in minutes with you, and starts changing commands. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ, lady, you've lost it. And she's like a Batman villain struggling to burst out,
Yes, and that's another thing too, is watching a lot of this is like watching grown-up Batman villains from 66 just deciding to do violent things now.
Right.
But there is a lot of silliness to it. And she is one of those things. Cain was the only part of this movie that really wasn't silly. Like, Tom Noonan took Cain, the character, like it was a baseball pitch, and knocked it way the fuck out of the park.
He was great.
He was the Red Dragon. Like, of course he was going to be scary. And he very much channeled a Charles Manson type character. He was scary. And that was before they turned him into like RoboCop 2, the most ginormous fucking thing I've ever seen.
I gotta admit, cool fucking design though. Like, that was a badass looking robot by comparison. It's like, okay, you start with the first one with Ed 209 and RoboCop. This one you have Ed 209, RoboCop, and two other prototypes that were completely ridiculous. But this one looked fucking killer. Like, this is what you want to build if you can't have another RoboCop.
But did you notice like the nuke sign?
Yeah,
is on his fucking chest.
It should have been glowing or lit up like all yellow, like an Iron Man symbol,
It should have fucking changed colors when he got the nuke inside of him, like holographic boner,
or whenever he was angry or pursuit mode or something,
Yeah, and the way they showed that it was Cain having that TV set that popped out with the VR face that came out that looked a bit like Job from Lawnmower Man. was actually quite frightening to people at the time. Like it
Oh, I
was rather
remember that. Yeah,
menacing. Um,
it was different. We hadn't seen something like that before. I mean, you've seen similar things, but you've never seen like a screen actually literally come out from like a helmet to show a face. And it's like, damn, that's pretty cool.
yeah, an animated face that looked so realistic that you could tell that it was Tom Noonan making those faces. And it was before we had mocap, really. Like if we had mocap at the time, it was very, very early stages.
Right. And what we did have was a lot of like the stop motion animation going on, which was amazing in this movie. Like, there's not much to complain about. Yes, a time here and there, it's like, yeah, that's fake, that's cheap, blah blah blah. Don't don't go too short on not giving enough credit for this. That's a lot of hard work. And when you're composing it on top of a live action scene with like a lot more going on than like Clash of the Titans ever did or Jason and the Argonauts, like this isn't easy and it was great. I really liked it.
Yeah, because not only did they have to make this beautiful fucking image of RoboCop too. Again, I'll get out of the way just so everyone can see him if they haven't seen him before. Like the only silly thing about it is he had itty bitty legs and this ginormous hulking body. But it was like War Machine crossed with RoboCop. He was fantastic.
Hulkbuster.
Yeah, very much so. But not only did they have to have him being so menacing and look so awesome and flawless, because he had to fight with RoboCop and make that look like Peter Weller was getting hit.
And
And
hard.
yeah, and they made it work. And they didn't have as many practical effects in this movie as they did with the first one.
Right.
Like there was a large part of Ed 209 that had been built to interact with versus the stop motion that you'd see in other shots. They didn't have as much of that with this. There was some, but there was a lot of budget cuts to this movie, and they managed to still make that good special effects sci-fi movie. Really what they just did is they made it they gave him a different paint job. Like if you look here,
Right.
all that there on his chest where he's gotten shot, that's not even indented. That's just painted to look like it is.
Right.
At this point, Peter Weller was wearing rubber because the first costume was so goddamn awkward and heavy that like he couldn't move. He had to be taken in and out of it. Like Freddy Krueger would have to undergo 8 hours of makeup. At this point, they made it a lot lighter so he could, like, his skin could breathe through it. He had a lot more movement that he could do.
It looked good.
It did look good. And they continued to do that onto the TV series. But it got to be too much, I think, because there's parts where it's like, you're not seeing plastic, vinyl, or metal or anything. You see that it's like spandex and that somebody's wearing spandex with foam over their limbs. They could have touched that up a little bit, but given a little bit of suspension of disbelief, fuck it. It's still RoboCop.
Except for when they tore him apart.
Yeah.
That was one scene they could have gone really gnarly with, and they did not. I actually found that a little too comical at points. I'm like, oh man, it goes back to the crew not being intimidating like at all. It's like you're getting attacked by a bunch of kittens. Like kittens aren't gonna fucking rip you apart. Yeah, they got a jackhammer out and they started dismembering him, but I don't know how they directed Peter to not like really respond to that. Kind of didn't really work for me. It's like you blew his hand off again in the second movie in a row, and he's like looking at his hand like, what's going on? And then he gets magnetized, and then they start chipping away at pieces. I mean, then they just chuck him out of the freaking car at the end. I'm like, okay, you just threw out like 3-4 pieces, just one of you. Yet it takes like 10 of you to pick up him as a whole. Like he should weigh like a ton.
Yeah, with like 30 cops right there. And granted, they were holding picket signs instead of guns, but there were still 30 cops right there, and they had like no qualms about stopping in front of them, not wearing masks, and throwing out RoboCop piece by piece.
Yeah, like they didn't give a damn.
Yeah, and then they peeled away.
Like,
Well,
yeah.
okay.
Sending a message, we could take out your piece of shit police.
Yeah, because I mean, people at home, if you don't know what happens in RoboCop 2, basically OCP lends the city money that they know that the city has no way of paying back. So the fine print basically is when the city can't make a payment, OCP immediately forecloses on the entire city. That means they would own everything in the city.
Everything.
And they're wanting to increase crime, so they get the cops gone. They want their own automated police force. They don't want to have to pay these cops. If they have automated police, they don't have to pay them. And so it's really kind of shitty. And they are just extreme cocksuckers about it. It goes beyond Delta City. It's about owning everything about it and business control over the consumer in ways that you didn't think that a business could control the consumer.
Yeah, they want to basically, the way I look at it is they want to raise the city so they could like construct their perfect utopia city from the ground on up. They want to do like what Ra's al Ghul wants to do in Batman the Animated Series, and they're actually getting away with it until ultimately it ends up not working out. But I did find it funny that, you know, money did come into the possession of the police department, and in one little clip the DA refuses to let them have access to it to pay off their debt. And I just found that hilarious because it's like, well, police seizure and you can't use it. You hear about it all the time.
Well, that was fucked up. Yeah, because it's like he has to go and accept money from Hobb, this like 12-year-old fucking nuke dealer
that he doesn't take seriously for literally 5 minutes, and then he finds out, oh shit.
Yeah, then it's like, oh my god, I'm seeing all this gold, like actual gold bars and cash and all sorts of stuff. And it's like, what else do you say at that point? Like,
yeah, 50 million will do. It'll do just fine.
Yeah, like, and the mayor, God bless him, like, he was like a slimy politician, but the most decent person in the movie as far as the side characters.
Man, he tried to stand up to freaking everybody, and him trying to stand up to the old man was hilarious because then the old man tells him to sit down.
Oh, that was great. That was fucking great. Like, he pulled the fucking fangs out at the mayor. Boner was
like,
not
he commanded
the nice
his presence and power. Like, in that split second, you found out how top-notch he was as a villain himself. Like, all he's got to do is just say sit down, and it's like, oh shit. Dan O'Hurley is fantastic. It's one of the few things of this movie that really stands out and feels very lacking in other projects after this.
Yes, I like the gentleman that was cast as Boner in the TV series, but he's not the same character at all.
At all. Yeah, when we get into the show podcast of the show, a little upcoming tip for all of you podcast followers is I will be bringing up what I think that they should have done from RoboCop 2 and into the show, but at that time you're already going for a TV rating, which means you're going to be bringing down the PG factor down to PG level, and so you had to change things. But there's some things I think they could have done that would have made, if they made this show now, my idea would be keep that same character of Dan O'Hurley and keep the same sort of sergeant that we had for the police department and keep that dynamic, because if you had that same dynamic going on in the show back then, you could have pulled in a big enough audience to get a couple more seasons, I think. But at that time, they were definitely aiming for a different audience.
Yeah, they were. Who watches that cartoon? Everyone liked that cartoon. Get them in here.
And yes, we'll be covering that as well, so stay tuned.
Yeah, right. Again, we're not going to watch the third movie. We'll watch everything else except that.
Pretty much. If you really want us to do RoboCop 3, got to join us on Patreon for that one and make us do it.
Right. But one thing I caught, because again, I said I made 34 screenshots of things that,
Well, let's get to it, bro.
yeah, it was either plot points or whatever else. But the mayor was trying hard as fuck to raise the money to just basically stick it to OCP. And they do a like telethon, like you'd see on UHF or the MDA telethons, what have you. And it was terrible. And they didn't even raise remotely enough fucking money.
No.
And Boner, the old man, and Finkel, the lady, which I think her name was what, Fax, Dr. Fax. They sent RoboCop to as a hitter, basically a hitman, to go kill the mayor. The mayor's the only person that survives because he slides down the sewer out into Lake Michigan, into the river. And it's gross, but then the first thing he does when he figures it out is he goes straight to OCP to basically yell at the old man. And I think that's when you'd said the old man told him to shut the fuck up and sit down.
Yep.
And he does until they call out RoboCop 2, and he freaks the fuck out, and he grabs his partner by the dick.
And he looks like right at it too.
Yeah, let's spoof this. The guy's looking right down at the hand on his dick. So that was one of those things. And again, it was not a plot motivator, but it motivated me to be like, what's happening here?
Well, when you're startled, you just start grabbing for whatever's hard, I guess.
I guess it's like there was. I've not grabbed anybody's junk sitting next to me before. A hand, maybe an arm. Never their crotch. Never their crotch.
Well, I like how everybody else in that picture is just sitting there like, that's interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it's a 12-foot fucking giant robot with Gatling guns on it, and it growls, and it just scared the shit out of this like street smart fucking mayor that just had the worst day of his fucking life because of it. It was just goddamn funny, but him grabbing the guy's fucking dick, I had to rewind it. Like, did I just see that? Yeah, I did.
Nut shot.
Yeah. And another one of the things that they did as far as cutting down on the special effects is how much of Cain that they kept versus how much of Murphy that they kept of him. And it was just his eyes and the brain. And that's really all that they wanted. And they didn't quite realize that Cain was awake and noticing everything. And it's like I wanted to make it look a little bit more familiar. It looked just like Mother Brain. So I was like, okay, well, I guess that still makes him menacing. But what they had before, what Dr. Jax was just sitting there looking at was just this brain and a pair of eyes. And she's sitting there talking shit to it, basically. And he's hearing the whole thing. And Cain goes completely fucking ballistic once he gets off his leash. And you can't blame him for going as nuts as he does on the OCP types.
Well, he didn't want to die. And when he saw that she was trying to kill him, he's like, oh God, no, I actually don't want this.
Yeah, she unplugged his life support to have that candidate.
Yep.
And like she wanted the worst possible candidate that they can get to wipe out the old Detroit Police Department. And it was fucked up. That was the whole thing. And they were trying to replace RoboCop. They refused to get him fixed once Cain dismantled him because he was too efficient at lowering crime. So getting Alex fixed was counterproductive to the creation of Delta City.
All right.
And you're like, wow, that really sucks. Like they wanted a criminal because it would do low down dirty things. But they didn't stop and take into account that that criminal is still going to be an individual, just like Alex turned out to be. It was just a moral compass issue.
And a drug issue.
Yeah,
He
that
wanted
too.
his nuke.
That was funny as shit. Like you see his hand going, like give it.
Yeah, I'm ready for my fix.
But like they were trying so fucking hard to replace RoboCop. This one that you'd seen previously was like their final fifth and final prototype. The first one was fantastic, where it came out.
Great look.
Yeah, it looked awesome. It shot the guy who created it. It shot the lady controlling it, and then it pulls out a gun and fucking shoots itself in the head. You're just kind of like, Monday got you down. I understand, pal. And then there was another one. This one here is what my buddy Emiliano remembered the most from it. Is this thing comes out looking
prototype,
like, yeah, looking like something out of an Energizer or a Energizer commercial or Michael Jackson video, and it pulls its helmet off to expose his fucking brain and screams and falls over and dies.
I remember in the audience watching this when my mom took me to the theater. There were other kids in the audience, and they all screamed when that happened. I do remember that.
Oh God, we laughed so hard. Like that was our like universal face for like we're so bored and we don't want to sit here anymore. It was great. It was so great. The little things like that I enjoyed more than anything else. Then they had a whole lot of stupid in it. Not a whole lot of stupid, but where it got stupid, it was really stupid. Like right here, the movie ends on a scene of RoboCop telling Lewis basically like it's another day in the office. He looks just like fucking Voldemort tried to kill him. And he's trying to like crank the lug nut in his fucking head, you know, getting himself all straightened out and cleaned up. And you're like, that's kind of fucking stupid. The TV show didn't even do that. I didn't understand that ending.
Well, he took his helmet off in the first one to fix himself. And so he had his open face for a while at the very end. So you could get the visual cues and things.
And that's important for actors, like especially back then. Like they had to have their face. Their face sold the movie. So nobody fucking wore a mask for very long or throughout an entire film.
Judge Dredd.
Yeah, that
Sylvester Stallone. Fuck that movie.
That was the best and worst example that ever was. And God bless Carl Urban for never taking that fucking helmet off for a single second.
Great fucking movie.
Yeah, but this, it's like it was okay.
He's not even using a Craftsman. Like, goddamn.
It's a goddamn Makita. Who uses those? Oh shit. But the other thing that I wanted to point out that they changed for this movie that made it seem like it was a little bit cooler is they made him do trick shots where he'd be looking one way and fire the gun another way and like totally fucking smoke somebody through the door. And it was cool.
That was good though.
Yeah, it got really ridiculous as far as its believability. But you have to understand, watching this movie, it's like watching Batman and Robin immediately after watching Batman 89. You're like, okay, here's this dark, gritty type movie. And then here's another movie with the same characters that's a lot more pop bubble
toned down.
Yeah. And it's not as extremely dumb and comic bookish as Batman and Robin, but it does have those blacklight elements. It's got the glow paint everywhere. And it does have some stupidness. Again, like a child drug dealer. Dumb as fuck is what that was.
Yeah.
Oh,
it did. But it was missing the dark, gritty realism of the first one, I felt.
Yeah, it had, again, like you said, kids spray painting on them. It had all the
Kick me.
unsavory types in the fucking arcades that our parents wouldn't want us to go to as kids, throwing shit at them. And it was silly stuff like that. But
It
again,
didn't even need to be there, in my opinion, was the arcade thing.
yeah, the trick shots. Well, the arcade thing was just to show that dirty cop was a dirty fucking douche.
Yeah, I know.
But the trick shots, they kind of made up for that a little bit because the violence when he did do shit like that was still there. They were tearing people up.
Oh yeah.
Like they didn't have the budget for it, so I mean, it was quick edits when you'd
So
see
it
the
wasn't a
violence.
whole lot. They couldn't dwell on it for more than a split second, but
Yeah, but it was stuff like that came out of this was still really good. Is that the same one? No. Okay, but I still like this picture. I just didn't want to go back to anything that. Anyway.
no problem.
But let's see. I mean, what was there anything that you noticed about this that was different than the first movie that took away something from Murphy?
Well, for me, one thing I was catching is he was a lot more interested in his family situation and trying to either be or not be back in their lives. And it's like, I understand that. That's an interesting choice. It does present a different dynamic to him. Ultimately, it goes nowhere, though.
Yes.
And
And
that's the
that,
problem with it. I didn't have a problem with them doing it, but basically they gave up on that like the last 40 minutes of the movie. It's like, okay, why'd you even introduce it if you weren't going to follow it up at the end?
yeah, because in the first movie, there was, again, we talked about it last week, there was no mystery about his identity. Like that's everyone knew that it was Alex Murphy. Then you go a year into the future, which is basically part two is a year after the first movie, time wise.
Yeah.
Where he's doing that whole superhero thing. If she knows who I am, that could endanger her life. Or he's got the angst of I'm not really a man. I can't give her what a husband can give her. It didn't need to be because, like you said, it didn't fucking go nowhere. And you see that becoming stupid in the TV series. But even though some of it's really stupid, it's better than where they just left it here, where it's like he's just instantly over it.
Yep. Murphy's
They
dead. I'm RoboCop.
yeah,
Later, bitch.
I don't know you, you don't know me. I'm out. But after that, they took away even more from him. They took away Lewis. Like Nancy Allen's in this movie for like 5 minutes. And it's noticeable.
Some of the stuff that she was in, though, she was actually pretty active. She actually got to kill some people on this one.
Yeah, she did.
I mean, she did in the first one, but she was using a bigger gun.
Was she?
Well, she got to blow up the tower in the first one with
Oh, that's right. She used the Cobra assault rifle.
yeah.
She did fucking kill this guy, though. The bullet in his fucking head.
Yeah, like that, she shot the fucker to hell on high water and one of the other fight scenes. She put like 6 bullets in the other dude. I'm like, okay, you gave her something to do, but other than, oh, your hair changed. Okay. She's supposed to be his partner. She doesn't have to be in like 90% of the movie, but more than 5 minutes would have been nice. She's a lot more in the third one. However, I think that was a make good on the little that she was in this one. And it still wasn't even that great of a role that they gave her. She's way overclassed for part 3, I'll tell you that.
I could see that. I could see that because she and Peter Weller both are great actors put into silly movies.
Yeah.
And that's okay, but I mean those type of actors don't like to be in those silly movies. And I get that. I'm a sellout and a mercenary, so it's like I would play Iron Man or RoboCop until I couldn't fucking do it no more. They won't let me. I don't care
You
about
want to James
typecasting.
Bond that bitch. Gotcha.
Yes.
I joke, but if I found a role that was just as juicy and wonderful, I would do the same thing. Like, I'm sure Carl Urban would like to play Dredd until the end of time, but he's gone on to do the show with the boy called The Boys, which is bloody fantastic. And so if he could ever do Dredd again, I'd love it. And Peter Weller, well, he did lend his likeness to the new video game coming up at the actually beginning of October 4th, it's supposed to drop. He did lend his likeness to that because he hasn't been involved with any other RoboCops since part 2. The only reason he skipped part 3 was because he got a chance to do a David Lynch movie, The Naked Lunch. Or Naked Lunch.
Oh,
And so he had to choose between the two, and he chose wisely.
I'm sure.
Indiana Jones reference for all you fans out there. He chose wisely.
Yeah, considering like part 3 basically killed the franchise for 20 years.
I like parts of it. It had a great idea with a Japanese rival corporation having their own robot. But that's about the extent of it. Had some ideas, but none of them were executed very well. And they gave RoboCop wings.
I don't know. They make some crazy ass decisions in some of these movies. Like the hot tub scene was awkward and unnecessary. Johnson had a really weird look on his face. Like, did you catch that at all?
Yep. Like, what the?
Well, because the old man Boner, he's in the fucking hot tub and he's got saggy ass titties. And then Dr. Jax, she comes in and she's kind of cute and all that, but she's wearing a kimono because they're into that sort of thing. But it was the grossness of it. Like it was a three-way. They cut out a three-way is basically what happened. And the image of it was just, it was gross. Like that didn't need to be in that point in time.
So you put yourself in the picture. Gotcha.
Well, it was good. It was all pointing out the T and everything. And I'm sorry to our Patreons, the fucking behind the scenes got deleted. Considering the behind the scenes was my behind.
There's enough butt in that picture as it is. At least we got some text covering it up.
But I love the look on Johnson's face. Like, if you look, and I'll blow it up for the Facebook group, like his fucking eyes are like, why?
What is happening here?
My apologies, everyone. There's RoboCop and a gun again.
There you go.
I have all this green screen equipment, and I needed to do something funny. Last week, I walked through one screen and disappeared into the other. This week, I did something naked. What?
And that's how we're gonna cap off RoboCop 2, y'all.
with a naked Kev.
Kevin's going wild. Kev goes wild.
It was great. I didn't even have to fucking Photoshop anything. It was just like, put one cloth here, stand behind it. I'm like, and it looks like I'm sitting in the hot tub. Yay! It's cheap tricks, kids.
Yep, pretty much. Anything else for us, Kevin?
Yes. Favorite quote from the movie. Because again, it reinforced that fucking one, fascism, and two, capitalism. When the Dr. Jax yells at Alex, "You're obsolete!" It's like, oh shit! Like, if you watch Twilight Zone, like that whole fascist obsolete thing is not a good sign for you. Like, it basically means the fascists want to wipe you out completely. And that not joking, that going to the seriousness was probably the moral of the story for me, was that obsolescence and having to grow, take out at the knees, and destroy. And that's RoboCop in a nutshell.
RoboCop. How we watched the.
It's more complicated than what people give it credit for. That's all I'm saying. Like
It's a fun movie, y'all.
the second movie, okay, let's just keep it to the second movie. The second movie is a lot of fun. It's not a good movie. The first movie is a good movie and it's a lot of fun. This is just a lot of fun. It doesn't have to be good.
Yeah, if you try and take it too seriously, that's where you encounter the problems with the movie.
Yes. And you're gonna have questions and nitpicks. It's just not worth it. If you just go in there thinking to yourself, you know what? This looks fun. I liked the first movie. All I want to do is see somebody get shot with, like, you know, a giant ass pistol. This movie is still going to be for you. If you like giant fucking robots, even if it's stop motion, this movie is for you. Or if you like corporate greed and espionage and shit like that, this movie is for you.
Yep, there's something here for just about everybody, except for if you're looking for nudity, that's unless you want to watch Naked Kev or Dan O'Hurley.
What? He showed his titties. I could show my butt.
Not on YouTube, buddy. We might get demonetized.
What? It was just, I covered it up on purpose and everything.
Bad Kev. Bad. I kid. RoboCop 2 is a fun movie. Just like Kevin said. Is it the best? No. Is it the worst? Hell no. If you want the worst, we're coming up on a couple of them. And we're only going to do one of them anyway.
I'm actually pretty stoked because that movie I probably will hit really hard. Like, I had a hard time the last 2-3 weeks because there've been movies that I really like. It's like I can't crack jokes about it. It's like, God, I actually have to do my job and like point out the artistic aspects of it. So that's why I wanted
plenty.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure I got your obsolete in there. It's like, if that's the most important thing in the movie, like, please at least say it at the last 30 seconds, Kev.
Absolutely. So, RoboCop remake coming up with Michael Keaton. And I don't remember who else is in it because I've only seen it once. I'm about to see it a second time, so here we go.
It's motherfucking Sam Jackson. Sam Jackson.
And I still don't remember him in it. Enough of these motherfucking RoboCop sequels. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next time. And hey, if you were into Patreon, we're at patreon.com/SunsAndShadowsCast. Thank you, Chad Peterman and Skeeter Slater, for being our Patreon supporters. We'll see you all next time. Make sure you check us out on all of our social media platforms. We got Facebook, Twitter. We are at Suns and Shadows. We're also on Instagram at SunsAndShadowsCast. We are at SunsAndShadows.com. Thank you again, everybody, and we'll see you down the road.